I tried making pasta with a cream sauce. It's homemade, so please enjoy it while it's still warm. But the dish she served had a terrible smell. I hesitated to take a bite because it just didn't smell right. Aren't you going to eat it? Don't you like my cooking? Are you trying to be difficult? Holly asked, seeming upset, as if she wanted to make me feel guilty. When Holly left the table, I quietly switched my plate with my son Aiden's. I hoped I was just being overly cautious. Aiden took a big bite without hesitation, but immediately after, he collapsed backward, foaming at the mouth. Aiden, what happened? Why did he collapse? I realized then that Holly had deliberately tampered with my plate. Before she could pretend to act innocent, I knew I needed to get back at her. My name is Susan, and I turned 62 this year. After Aiden got married, it was just me and my husband left in a quiet house, and I missed the lively noise. One day, Aiden looked troubled as we talked about his married life. Mom, the truth is, my wife's cooking isn't very good. What are you talking about? You should just be grateful she cooks for you. I am, but I just can't eat it, Aiden admitted. I scolded him for complaining, but it was odd. Aiden had never been a picky eater and always enjoyed food. This wasn't like him. Come have dinner with us sometime, I suggested. Really? Thanks, Mom, he replied, his face lighting up. I thought it would be a nice way to bond with his wife, Holly. But Holly's actions would soon shock me. A few days later, Aiden and Holly joined us for dinner. My husband and I had a lively evening with them, enjoying the time together. I hope you like the food, Holly, I said. It's delicious, she replied, smiling. Aiden always says how amazing your cooking is. I'm lucky he has such a talented mom. I felt flattered by Holly's compliment. Then Holly added, I made something special for you, too. She placed a large container on the table. Holly, what did you make for us? I asked. It's a French dish called quiche, she said confidently. Holly opened the container to reveal a dish that looked somewhere between an omelette and a pie, but the smell was horrible, and I couldn't help but cringe. The surface was burnt, and the inside was a gooey, undercooked mess with a fishy odor. You just mix the dough and bake it, so it's easy to make, Holly said confidently. Oh, is that so? I replied. Should we reheat it? It's delicious cold too, so it's fine, Holly insisted. I had no choice but to try it, so I nervously picked up my chopsticks. The dough looked undercooked and lumpy, which made me hesitate. My husband noticed and quietly put down his chopsticks without taking a bite. Aiden stayed silent and didn't eat it either. Oddly, Holly didn't touch it herself. Aren't you going to eat it, mother-in-law? Holly asked. I'm sorry, but it seems a bit undercooked. Could we reheat it? I asked carefully, hoping she wouldn't be offended. But Holly frowned. I tried to choose my words gently, but she still seemed upset. Never mind, she snapped, slamming the container on the table. I didn't expect to be treated like this just for bringing a dish. Do you think you can act like this just because you're good at cooking? Holly, calm down, Aiden said. Before you complain to Mom, don't you think you should at least try it yourself? It's easy to make, so I don't need to taste it, Holly argued. Why aren't you eating it either? How can you serve food to others without trying it yourself? He asked. Just give it a taste. Although I didn't mean to cause trouble, the situation had become awkward. I tried to calm things down, but Holly stayed angry and laughed bitterly. Aiden apologized and went after her when she left. In the now silent dining room, I put my head in my hands. If this keeps up, she'll think I'm just being difficult with her, I sighed, looking at my husband. I glanced at the leftover container and wondered what to do. It's not that I think I'm a great cook, I thought to myself. I'm just average. I just want to find a way to get along. I thought about suggesting that Aiden make his own meals sometimes, but I didn't want to hurt Holly's pride. He's my son, but it's not my place to interfere in their household. After talking it over, my husband and I decided it was best not to get involved too much. But, strangely, Holly started visiting our house often. Mother-in-law, will you make us lunch? She asked one day. And could you put dinner for Aiden in a container to take home? The next day, Holly showed up again, this time alone and with empty containers. She wanted me to make lunch and dinner for her and Aiden. Surprised, I asked her if something was wrong. Aiden seems to prefer your cooking, so I thought I'd ask you to make our meals from now on, Holly said. That's a problem, I replied. Why don't we cook together? No, you're just going to make that disgusted face again, she snapped. You're just giving me a hard time. I was lost for words. She had already decided that I was a terrible mother-in-law, and no matter how much I explained, she wouldn't listen. Cooking wasn't hard for me, but doing it every day for a daughter-in-law who didn't like me was becoming unbearable. I thought about teaching her a few simple recipes, but she refused to learn. "You're good at cooking, so just make the meals for us, and please take care of tomorrow's meal too," she demanded. Despite trying to explain, she only became more demanding each day. On days I refused, it seemed like she bought prepared food from the grocery store. Aiden didn't mind eating it and didn't say anything about it, but Holly started complaining when he ate at our house. "Aiden's been spoiled by you. He just eats store-bought food now. He's always loved food since he was a kid, but he hardly eats my cooking. He's just trying to hurt my feelings," she said. Holly started coming to our house almost every day for lunch and would ask for dinner for Aiden as well. Eventually, she started asking me to make Aiden's lunch and deliver it in the morning, which left me feeling frustrated. I talked to Aiden about it, asking him to do something about Holly coming to our house so much, but instead, he started giving me money for their meals so he could avoid Holly's cooking. "If you're paying so much, why not have Holly learn to cook?" I asked, but Holly said it hurt her feelings, and she refused to listen. Things got worse when Holly found out that Aiden was giving me money for food. "Why are you paying your mother? Is this supposed to be an allowance? I didn't hear anything about this," she yelled. "It's because you're making my mom cook for us," Aiden explained. "What's wrong with paying for our food?" "Well, it's because you don't eat my cooking. It can't be helped," Holly shot back. We tried many times to talk things out with her, but no matter what we said, she wouldn't listen. She insisted that not eating her cooking was a form of harassment and that we were trying to put her down. Eventually, I decided I wouldn't cook for them anymore, which seemed to settle things, but Holly still wasn't happy about it. I didn't want to get involved any further, so I told them they would need to resolve the issue themselves. A few weeks later, Holly came to our house again on a quiet afternoon. I tensed up when I saw Holly at the entrance, but this time, Aiden was with her. "I want you to teach me how to cook," Holly said. She finally agreed to learn. "Please, just this once," I replied, relieved that we were finally making progress. I led them to the kitchen, thinking everything would work out. Holly said she had brought her own ingredients and seemed more motivated than before, but when I tried to help, she suddenly kicked me out of the kitchen. Then, for some reason, she also kicked Aiden out. We exchanged worried glances, but Holly said, "I can't concentrate if I'm not alone," and refused to listen. A few minutes later, she called us back to the living room. She had made pasta and served it to us. It seemed like it wasn't cooked for long enough, so I tried to check in the kitchen, but Holly stopped me. "I want you to teach me how to cook," Holly said. She finally agreed to learn. "Please, just this once," I replied, relieved that we were finally making progress. I led them to the kitchen, thinking everything would work out. Holly said she had brought her own ingredients and seemed more motivated than before, but when I tried to help, she suddenly kicked me out of the kitchen. Then, for some reason, she also kicked Aiden out. We exchanged worried glances, but Holly said, "I can't concentrate if I'm not alone," and refused to listen. A few minutes later, she called us back to the living room. She had made pasta and served it to us. It seemed like it wasn't cooked for long enough, so I tried to check in the kitchen, but Holly stopped me. "Mother-in-law, what's wrong? Please try it while it's still warm," she said. I hesitated. The pasta with cream sauce didn't look as bad as before, but when I mixed it with a fork, I noticed strange objects in the sauce. At first, I thought it was something like leftover dough, but it smelled like an air freshener. Aiden tried it next to me. He looked surprised and said, "It's delicious." He seemed genuinely impressed. "Wow, it's good, Holly. You've learned to make this kind of food?" Holly replied, "I always cook properly. Even my mother-in-law won't refuse it." Aiden laughed and said, "Mom, it's just normal pasta," but usually, Holly would yell at him for such a rude comment. This time, though, she didn't care and just urged me to eat quickly. The more I mixed the pasta, the stronger the strange smell became, and I hesitated. "Why won't you eat it? You just want to make me look bad, right?" Holly asked. "No, that's not it," I started to say, but then Holly's phone rang, and she hurried out of the room to take the call. I took the opportunity to ask Aiden to secretly swap the pasta. He happily started eating the second plate, but suddenly, he flipped backward and collapsed, foaming at the mouth. I screamed, "What happened? Why did Aiden collapse?" Holly rushed back to Aiden's side as I called for an ambulance. She looked confused and asked, "What happened to Aiden?" Aiden was taken to the hospital, and my husband and I joined him. We felt a little relieved when we saw Aiden lying in the hospital bed, but Holly, still acting confused, asked, "Why did Aiden collapse?" Before we could say anything, she pointed at me and said, "It should have been you. Did you force Aiden to eat it?" "What on earth are you talking about?" I asked, shocked. "Holly, what did you do?" My husband and I were trying to get answers from Holly, but she just kept accusing me. She said the most outrageous thing. "You insulted my cooking, so I thought I'd get back at you," she said coldly. "Get back at me?" I asked, confused. She continued, "It's also my mother-in-law's fault that Aiden won't eat my cooking. Aiden has always been on her side." Neither Aiden nor I had ever tried to do that, but Holly seemed to think we hurt her feelings. "Yes, you did," Holly replied. "That's why I thought everything would be peaceful if my mother-in-law wasn't around." It became clear that Holly had put something harmful in the pasta she served me. The white residue in the sauce turned out to be detergent. Luckily, no one was seriously hurt, but if things had gone wrong, Aiden could have been in a much worse condition. Aiden should have noticed the strong smell, but I couldn't just sit by when things went beyond simple cooking issues. "If you think it would be better if I wasn't around, all you had to do was try harder at cooking," I said, "but as long as I'm here, Aiden will always be on my side." Holly didn't seem to understand how serious things were, and I was disappointed by her attitude. My husband shook his head in disbelief at her childish response. "That's enough, Holly," he said. "I'd like to talk to your parents too." "What? Why?" Holly asked, confused. "Because talking to you doesn't get us anywhere," my husband replied. After Aiden recovered and was discharged from the hospital, we arranged a meeting with Holly's parents. Even though she was very reluctant, I called her parents first to explain the situation. "I deeply apologize for the tremendous trouble our daughter has caused you," I said. "Oh no, it's something my mother needs to apologize for," Holly's mother, Kate, replied. "That's right, it's my mother-in-law who should apologize," Holly added. Every time Holly spoke, her mother gave her a stern glare, making her lower her head. Kate's strict attitude made me wonder if Holly's behavior was a result of her upbringing. "We'll cover the medical expenses," I said. "If there's anything else we can do to make amends, please let us know." "Stop it, I'm not paying anything," Holly snapped. "Holly, can you tell me why you did such a thing?" I asked. As she did in the hospital, Holly blamed me, saying that Aiden only ever took my side. "I didn't force Aiden to side with me," I replied. "I just took over cooking because you wouldn't do it." At this point, I had had enough. I showed Kate a photograph. "What's this?" Kate asked, looking at the picture. "This is a dish Holly brought to our house," I explained. "She says it's called quiche." Kate stared at Holly in shock and began scolding her harshly. Holly tried to make excuses, but Kate didn't let her off the hook. Holly lowered her head in silence as her mother continued to lecture her. We didn't even have a chance to speak. Eventually, Holly admitted everything. She had believed that if Aiden kept siding with me, he would eventually expect her to take care of me. So, she thought if she could get me hospitalized, Aiden would no longer feel responsible for me. I was stunned by the ridiculous logic. "I'm sorry, but I can't continue our marriage after something like this," Aiden said. "What? It's not my fault. You shouldn't have taken your mother's side," Holly argued. "You be quiet," Aiden said. "You could be turned over to the police for this." At the mention of the police, Holly turned pale. Although there was some trouble with compensation and hospital fees, Kate promised to make Holly pay for what happened, and the situation didn't escalate further. Holly acted immature for a while, but she seemed to feel down after Aiden told her, "I can't be with you anymore." I later learned that Holly's parents, who she claimed she didn't get along with, were actually professional chefs. Holly had been scolded by them for her unorthodox cooking ideas. After getting married, she started cooking however she wanted without any guidance. Aiden told me that her parents were furious, especially her father, who we didn't meet during the discussion. He was so angry that he began teaching Holly the basics of cooking in a process he called bridal training. This made me realize that I needed to teach my son basic household skills too. Aiden, while enjoying having someone cook for him, started making simple dishes on his own. He even asked me to teach him how to cook, and sometimes he comes over to cook meals with me. For some reason, my husband also became interested in cooking, and the three of us now enjoy cooking together. Sometimes, I let them handle the cooking while I relax.